Hello there, David Taylor on Mr Pelargonium, back with another video for the Pelargonium and Geranium Society. We're into winter. I've got my hot coffee with me. It's started to turn very, very cold all of a sudden after a chronically wet autumn. We'll have a little chat about that as the morning goes on. So let's have a look at what I've been up to. Hello there, well it's good to see you again. We're into December now, we're into sort of official winter time, well meteorologically speaking anyway. Filming this on the 6th, I think Tuesday the 6th of December. And the weather in the UK has finally turned very wintry. It's getting very cold over the next week. They are forecasting that the day temperature is not actually going to be much above freezing point. And we haven't actually had that in the UK, I don't think, for a couple of years. So it's going to be that time when you're going to have to really start thinking about what you're going to be doing with your pelargoniums if you've got an unheated greenhouse, because you really have to going to start to protect your plants. Now we're coming out, of course, of a chronically wet autumn. I have been down the greenhouse every day picking off dead leaves. The damp has been shockingly bad in the greenhouse. I have just a particularly damp greenhouse, and where I have been able to, I've been opening it up during the day as best I can, but we've had so much rain. Some parts of the UK had 3 times their average rainfall in November, and just to think that the normal average is actually very wet, but to get 3 times the average is really shockingly bad, and that's not too far from where we are here. I'm in sort of, well, central southern England, I suppose you'd sort of say. But yeah, just a bit further east in some parts of the south coast, they've had a chronically wet autumn. And it's been really difficult. As I say, it's been a non-stop monitoring of coming down, taking off leaves. I mean, I've still got quite a few to do. And the interesting thing is, of course, is that virtually since the start of December, which is nearly a week now, it has turned relatively dry. We've had a little bits and pieces of rain, but nothing too heavy. So that's good. The air is now beginning to dry, which means I can get the glass house open, providing it's not too cold. I'm not sure I'll be able to do that too much over the next week. But, you know, just to get a nice bit of dry air in here now, this is what we want, to dry everything out a bit. Now, all of my plants, particularly zonals, have really begun to slow up now. I'm only watering now zonals probably about once every 2 weeks. They don't need much in the way of moisture at all. They have officially now, well, I say officially, but they have gone into sleep mode, which is definitely what we're sort of on now. I mean, they're just a little bit damp, but they don't need anything. They're quite steady on the top. Just still the odd yellow leaf, which we need to get rid of. Just take that one off there. But in general now, everything is dormant. You got the winter dormancy, so they do not need much in the way of watering at all. Regals are a bit different. They continue to grow, of course, during the winter. And mine are putting on a lot of growth. And I just wait until they just start to show signs of just sort of limpness in the leaf, which means that I know they need a drink. And that one probably just needs a little bit of a drink. But again, it is literally a touch in the bottom of the saucer. See if I have got a bit of feedy water in there. And it's just literally making the bottom of the saucer wet. That's all I'm doing. Nothing complicated at all, just literally wettening the bottom of the saucer. That'll take that up and that'll fill that leaf up. But the zonals are generally totally dormant, so that's the end of those for now. I can just monitor them. They get very dry and again show a little bit of leaf droop. I will again just put a little couple of millimetres in the bottom of the saucer, and that's it. That's all they need. Don't need anything more. Just looking up here, again, couple of yellowing leaves. These really do need to be taken off straight away. I mean, I am generally going round fairly regularly. Now, some of this leaf yellowing will be caused by the fact that I am keeping them quite dry. So, because obviously, as I've said many times in the past, they put all the effort into the tips of the growth. So that's something just to keep your eye out. But, I mean, they're not going to come to any harm at all being dry now at this time of year. They're not respiring at all, particularly the colder it gets, they will not be respiring at all. So, you know, they need very little in the way of water. Now, I've mentioned before that the Regals are sort of continuing to put a big growth on. And indeed, I actually, at the end of this month, I will begin giving my tip stop to my Regals, give them a little bit of a shape, give them a little bit of a trim and a cut back, ready for the shows next summer. My glass house is quite dark, so I have to do mine very early. Regals are very light sensitive, so the fact that it's relatively dark means that I have to tip stop my Regals very, very early. It doesn't seem to affect the zonals so much. I give them their stop at the normal sort of 18 to 20 week mark, which is quite normal for stopping for shows for the zonals. So they're all quite normal. But my Regals, I've seen another yellow leaf there. My Regals I have to do really early. So the end of this month and into, say, the first week of January, that's probably something around 25 weeks, something like that to show, which is quite unusual, but that's what I have to do in order to get them to flower well for a show season in the middle of June. Now, the other thing that I've been doing with my young Regals is actually starting to pot them up. The very mild autumn has actually meant that I've actually had to start potting these up quite sort of early. So let's just show you what I've been doing. I wait for these just to start getting a bit limp because they're very, very dry. And this one is the next one that I'll pot on. When they get to that stage, I pot them on because I give them a little bit of water. Regals are, you know, the sort of plants that continue to grow, you know, say relatively strongly. I say relatively, that's in comparison to, say, zonals, which are totally dormant now at this time of year. But the Regals continue to grow a bit. So I will pop these on. There's my next one to go. I just wait till they just start to droop a little bit like this one is. I mean, I might as well just show you this. It's nothing too exciting. I think I've got enough compost there to do one. So these are going generally from a 3.5 inch pot to a 4.5 inch pot. It's Gosbrook Night Sky, that's one of my own. Well, they're all my own actually, I've just thought of that. So just tap it out. This is a very dry root ball, no marks or anything like that in the pot. I just scrape a little bit of the bottom of the root ball off, plop it in there, find a suitable pot, which is a 4.5 incher, I think. Yeah, that'll do. It's quite long. A little bit of compost in the bottom. Drop it in. Plant it fairly deep. It's probably too deep. A little bit more compost in there. That's perfect. And there we are. Just tap it back. I think I've just about got the right amount of compost there. So I've been doing a few over the last few days. Yeah, I mean, it's something to consider because the Regals, you know, they are unusual in that they continue to put on good growth over the winter. They like the cooler conditions. You can see I plan to do this. Not. That's perfect though. Now the one thing that I will do, I will give this a relatively substantial water. Much more than I would normally. It's because I want these roots, because they're growing, particularly if the light gets better over the next week or so, which is supposedly meant to be doing, even though it's going to be quite cold. The heater will be on as well a little bit. Dig out a saucer for it. I need a bigger saucer now because I've gone up to a bigger size pot. These are all clean down there. And all I'll do, I'll stand that in that saucer, update the label. Potted this on the 6th of December. Second pod on 6th of December. I mean, hopefully I'll get this video out this afternoon, so you're almost seeing this live as it's going on. You can see this is quite limp, and this is exactly how I want it to be. That will just get a water. I always use just fresh water, not feedy water with a, I've got to find my water, it's over here. Now, the important thing as well, if you are watering, I've almost certainly probably mentioned it in the past, I am filling up that saucer right up, but I'll let it take up what it needs and then I'll just chuck the rest and then I'll put the plant back where it's going to live. Just going to put that back there. So that one's fine. It's obviously really thirsty, but as I've said, Regals continue to grow, a little bit different to others, so that'll be fine in there. Now, I do realise, obviously, that overwintering now is an expensive game. Now, as it goes, up until this point, we've not really had much in the way of cold weather at all. I've only had the heater on about 2 or 3 times, but it's clearly beginning to change now. We're going to hit this first sort of cold spell of weather for the winter, so I will have to have it on, but I've only got it set to about 6 degrees, which will mean that the coldest parts of the glass house, that the farthest away from the heater, will probably go down to not much above freezing point. But that's okay, because in the way that I've arranged my glass house, I've got the plants that can handle cold, such as the Regals, in the farthest corners of my glass house. So that's how I've worked it out. And the bicolours and things like that, bicolour zonals that really could do with a bit more warmth, are in the area that get the heater, sort of maximum amount of heater effect, if you like, for want of better words. So they're in this sort of central block here. But if you've not got a heater, when we get night temperatures down to sort of -5, 6, 7, and day temperatures barely above freezing, you really do need to sort of be covering up your plants. Make sure they're dry. Don't get them overwatered. Make sure they're dry and cover them up with fleece, polystyrene blocks, all that kind of thing. Bed them in and hopefully they will pull through. But it's these times of year where we get a phase of very hard frosts and the day temperature not much above freezing, where you can really run into some problems if you do not have a heater. So keep them dry, keep them covered. Now the sun does still have a little bit of power in it, so if your glass house is in a sunny position and the temperature does, creep up during the day, think about uncovering your plants if you get the chance. I realise if you're working or whatever, it's not that easy to do. And you to get some light on them and then make sure that at night, again, you cover them up. So that's just about it for now. I'll perhaps see you towards the end of the month when I start giving my Regals a bit of a trim back ready for the show season. It's amazing how the time slips through and how we begin to start to look forward to the new growing season. So a couple of things. Firstly, if you're not subscribed, think about having a click of that subscribe button. I try and do videos relatively frequently. Obviously in the winter they don't come too thick and fast, but I generally try to get one out every 2 or 3 weeks at this time of year. But the other thing to mention, of course, is to wish everybody all the very best for the upcoming festivities of Christmas and New Year. And I hope that you all have a very good time over the holiday season. So that's it from me. I'll hopefully see you again towards the end of the month. Bye-bye for now.